All right, everybody, welcome into another episode of Sports with Doc and Dudes. We are actually down a couple dudes today. So Preston is just joining us through audio, and Dustin may or may not be in. I'm not sure, but it's great to be back with you and looking forward to another opportunity for us to get together and talk sports, which is just a great thing. And really excited about what we're doing here. So just looking forward to today's episode. So with that, just a reminder, the way we kind of do this is each of us has a story that we talk about, kind of bring to the other participants, and then we all kind of weigh in and give our thoughts and have some good discussion and conversation with that. So having said that, we'll go ahead and start with Dwayne. What do you got this week?
All right, so what I'm going to talk about, and it caught my attention because it still hits close to home to me, or for me, is and Dr. Sanderson, you're going to deal with it probably starting in the spring. Is the official shortage, is the referee shortage going on here in the state of Texas, this isn't. I mean, it's not. Well, it is nationwide news, but it seems to be bigger in Texas just because of it's affecting football. Maybe not volleyball so much now, but it's affecting football. And I still follow. There's a guy. His name's Matt Stepp, and he's like the Texas high school football guru. And he retweeted a story from earlier last week that 35 games had been affected just because of the referee shortage,
Dang.
and it's affected.
Wow.
Okay, instead of playing on Friday at 7 p.m., you're going to have to play Thursday at 5 o'clock. So those officials can official your game and then go official another game. So, games are getting moved to Thursday. They're getting pushed to 8 p.m. on a Saturday night. So, and the last I saw, they were down over 1,000 officials in the state of Texas,
Wow.
just football officials. And again, I still follow a bunch of high school football coaches and things like that. And I saw one last week. It was a sub-varsity game. Two coaches from each coaching staff were having to official the game because they didn't have officials. It was either that or they were going to have that was either that or they weren't going to play. So I guess my question is when I know when it got bad, but I don't guess I realized it was this bad, being down 1,000 officials. And we talked about it in your class. I think it was in the fall this past spring. What are some things that you guys think can be done? Because I know just for me, my first 2 years in the profession, I was that butthole coach that I was going to be on the officials from the start of the game to the end of the game. In football or baseball, I was going to be that guy. I guess just because I wanted to kind of like assert myself, hey, look at me, I'm going to be that guy or that coach. So I guess it kind of changed for me a couple years ago. We were playing in the Lubbock baseball tournament, and there was a bad call down third base. There was one of the umpires was on first base, and then obviously the home plate official umpire, he was behind the plate. Obviously, it was a blatant call, and I think the ball went to the left of the base, so it was a foul ball, or it was a fly ball and it landed foul. He called it fair, something like that. Anyway, I go approach him and I tell him what I see. He tells me what he sees. And, I'm like, dude, no, that's not what happened. Like, it was clearly a foul ball. He's like, well, coach, that's not what I saw. So I'm like, hey, can you get help on that? He shouldn't go ask the first base umpire. He couldn't see it. He's like, yeah, coach, I will. So I'm like, all right. He goes to ask him. The first base guy's like, no, it was fair. So of course, I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. So at the end of the game, I always tried my best to go see the officials or see the officials or the umpires. Hey, shake their hand. Hey, good job. See y'all next week or whatever it was. He pulled me over and he's like, coach, I just want to apologize. He's like, I blew that call. He was like, it was clearly foul. He's like, it was bang, bang. I wasn't looking. He said, I thought I saw it go fair, but it was clearly foul. He apologized. And then he tells me, coach, I just want to appreciate you for not embarrassing me in front of everybody. So that kind of made me step back, like, granted it was still when I was with the sub varsity, I'm this asshole. I'm gonna rip this college kid who's making $40 an hour or $40 a game. Like, what kind of person was that going to make me? So it kind of made me like reevaluate things. And the fact that he apologized for screwing up the call and then thanked me for not embarrassing him in front of everybody, it just kind of put everything in perspective. Like, these dudes are making $40 a game, and it's human error, but I'm just curious, like, why I know why they're leaving, but what can be done? Like, what do you think can be done other than educating, and even just with having a parent meeting, most of the time parents aren't going to go anyway. So
Right.
you can have the officials meeting, you can have the coaches meeting, but what I'm just curious what y'all think can or what could be done, because it's bad and games are getting canceled. Granted, it's sub varsity games, but still kids are getting cheated out of games because parents and coaches don't know how to act. So I'm just curious what could be done, or what are some things that can be done to kind of alleviate 1,000 referees. Doesn't sound bad, but in the state of Texas, that's pretty
Yeah.
bad.
Especially during football season, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
so I'm
like
just
the,
I'm
what do you
just
think,
curious.
Preston?
Really, it really comes down to two factors for me. One is pay. You got to pay them more. That's just always an incentive. And two is you got to ensure their safety a little bit more. Like you said, parents and coaches. I mean, increasingly, like we've seen, whether it's John Jay High School, what happened to that ref? Granted, those were
Right.
players, and what was it, Enid or Enos, whatever, or that player,
Edenberg
Edenberg,
in
Edenbergen.
South
Like
Texas.
those
Mhm.
are freak accidents, but you also got to ensure their safety, whether it's, you have parents and players sign, a thing that says, if you act badly, you're either banned for the game or, we will seek, the proper legal action, for instances like that. Because, I mean, like you said, they're making $40 a game. And now, if they blow a call, like, which it's human error, especially in high school. They don't have the luxury of replay. They're
Right.
going, oh, I messed up that call. Let me look at the camera and let me fix it. They don't have that luxury. So, especially as fans, especially if you have a kid in the game, you're more invested. You know, your emotions may get the better of you, and you might act a certain way to that official. And don't worry, I was that asshole coach too for a while, and I had to learn to kind
Yeah.
of shut my mouth and kind of calm down. So
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, Preston, I agree with you. I think the pay, the pay issue is significant. And it's interesting because, we were talking a little bit before we started. I mean, all these places are facing worker shortage. So
Yeah.
we shouldn't be that surprised that we're also seeing it trickle down into the sports industry, right? And last week we talked about the concession kind of venue workers. But Dwayne, I think youth sports is really a great place to be watching for this because, yeah, I mean, who wants to, and that's kind of been a criticism for years, like $40 a game or $10 an hour, whatever it is. Like, who wants to put up with that abuse, right?
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
that. And it's not to say that I think there's a certain expectation of like, we'll get criticism, but like, how is that criticism delivered?
Yeah.
Right. And how is it communicated, which I think is a whole separate, really fascinating topic to look into. But yeah, so I think it's the pay issue. And then it's just, there aren't people to work. Right. Like, so if Amazon can't get them to come to the warehouse or Target, what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
they're not the high school referees and the club referees, like, it's going to be the same thing. They're going to have to pay more. Um, and yeah, like, and you mentioned the parent meeting, I've yet to see a parent meeting that's changed anyone's behavior. So, I mean,
Exactly.
I could this potentially change behavior if we start seeing games canceled, maybe, but it's been something that people have speculated about. Like, we're going to see a referee shortage, or we've seen it in certain pockets of the country, but once it becomes more consistent, what do we do? Because then we're taking away opportunities from kids. And like,
Yeah.
and it's funny, you mentioned the story about the coaches. It's like, that's the little league solution, right? Like, you show up at the little league field and there's no umpire. So the coaches just,
Yeah.
those just call balls and strikes. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what, I mean, if games start getting canceled, like, I mean, right now they've been able to move games around, but yeah, if you start seeing games get canceled, and then you also have to wonder about quality, right? So like,
That was another thing I was gonna say. I mean, because well, when I got out in May, they're like, well, you should really consider being a referee, an official. I'm like, no, I'm not
yeah,
doing that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
no. First,
yeah.
and we have a coach on staff. He was or at Monterey, he's the head wrestling coach, football coach. Well, he baseball, and he did it on the side, and he enjoyed it, but I I don't. There's no way I couldn't do it. I have too big of a mouth, first of all, and I couldn't do it. There's no, I couldn't do it.
Well, I think at some point you just get tired of it, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and look, I mean, I've seen mostly baseball, right? Because that's what my kids play. But
yeah.
I mean, seen some really good umpires, seen some really bad umpires, so and you look at these organizations like Perfect Game or some of these other ones that just have all these national tournaments. Like, are they going to be able to staff them? I don't know. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to watch. But yeah, I think I think we're starting to see some structural issues for youth sports and just sports in general with this issue. And I don't know, I don't know what's going to change, but I think if people start losing games, that could potentially get people to change.
Yeah, and I even hesitate to pin it on parents and the coaches because their kids are just as bad. I mean, I know again, we were talking about it before we came on is the kids you're working with. I mean, I know we had a big problem with kids addressing the officials where I was at. So, I mean, it's not just parents and coaches, it's the kids too. I mean, some 15-year-old kid talking trash to a 40-year-old man with the family. I mean, you're only going to take that for so long before you do something to the kid or you say something to the kid.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's tough. And I know from my first couple years to my last year, I know I changed just with my interaction with the officials again, because they're making peanuts. And last year, I was always in the press box when I was at the high school, so I was never on the field. My first 2 years, I was on the field, but my last 6 years at the high school, I was always in the press box. So I noticed this last year when I was at the middle school, when we just stood on the field, that they had a police officer, and he just kind of walked up and down the sideline. And I had never noticed that again because I was always in the press box. But man, I guess it's gotten that bad to where you need an armed police officer on the field because something could potentially happen. And it's sad that we're at that point, but we've seen it happen in professional sports. People fighting, people running on the field. We saw it in a Tex game last weekend. Somebody got onto the field. So I don't know. I just think we're heading in a bad direction, and I don't know if there's coming back from it, other than like you said, games getting canceled. So it's going to be interesting to see in the next couple of years.
Yeah, Preston, just any final thoughts, like
Um,
quickly on what might happen here?
I mean, like you said, we're gonna see the canceling of games. We're gonna see the reshuffling of games. And maybe to wake up, the parents, coaches, even the kids. These guys need to get paid more. They need to have a little bit more respect. You know, just an all around structural change needs to happen because the system's been failing for a while, and it's kind of surprising that now we're finally seeing that it's at a breaking point.
Yeah, and one thing we didn't talk about, maybe this is where the robo umps will come in, right? So instead of putting the robo umps in minor league baseball, we'll put them in youth sports, right? So
Got to be better than Joe West.
yeah, for golf,
Angel
for sure,
Hernandez
yeah,
too.
yeah,
That'd be
absolutely.
interesting to
So
see.
that's a great one, Dwayne. All right, Preston, what do you got?
Okay, right now, I just, for me, I've never, when it comes, Tom Brady's going back to New England this week, and me being an avid sports fan, watching sports all my life, I just never got the fanfare or the anger that certain fans had, burning jerseys, whatever, just because a guy moved the team. We've seen it all the time, like I said, Tom Brady going back to New England, John Montana going back to San Francisco when he was with KC, LeBron going back to Cleveland whenever he was, with the Heat, whatever sport, why is it that, we feel so impassioned and so like, angry that a guy moves a team, even when the team moves on from him necessarily?
What do you think, Dwayne?
And I think it's because we have that connection. We think we have that emotional connection. Like we're vested. I watched, whatever it is, I watched Tom Brady for the last 15 years of his career, and you feel that attachment to him. I was, I'm a baseball fan, obviously, but I was a big Red Sox fan. Nomar Garciaparra years, and when he went to the Cubs and the Dodgers and all that. And now I find myself more. I'll watch any baseball. I can watch the Red Sox, but it's not appointment TV like it was, David Ortiz years, and Manny Ramirez years. And I don't know. I think because we feel that attachment, and now I don't feel as attached to the Red Sox. Now I'll watch anybody. Used to, it was just I was only watching the Red Sox, whoever they were playing. So it's just, I think it's just that emotional attachment. I was never burning jerseys. I still have a Nomar Garciaparra jersey in my closet.
Nice.
So I wasn't burning jerseys when he left. I mean, it's a personal decision for them and the family, them and their families. I mean, and if the team decides to get rid of you, it's they're not doing it out of spite, or they're not doing it out of, oh, well, he said this about me in the newspaper. They're doing it. It's a business decision. And we all know that professionals of all things, they know it's a business. So they're protecting their bottom line. The teams are protecting their bottom line. And just like, Nomar Garciaparra, when he got traded to the Cubs, the Red Sox were protecting their bottom line. And there's probably no ill will. I'm sure there's a little bit, but not enough to where, they're gonna say, oh, I'm not gonna go to the Hall of Fame with the Red Sox hat or whatever it is. I think it's just that emotional attachment we have to the team, to the player, or whoever it is, and we feel like they burned us whenever they go to another team, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
An interesting case I saw. I mean, I watched these things called A Football Life. They're documentaries that the NFL Network does on certain players, coaches. Well, they did one on James Harrison, was their latest one, I think. Yeah, and played for the Steelers for a long time. Was a great player for the Steelers. Well, the Steelers cut him, said, "You're not our guy anymore," and he went to New England. He was retired, but then New England gave him a call.
Yeah,
and he ends up signing with New England. Well, Steelers fans were like, of all the teams, you went to New England. How dare you? They were burning his jersey. They were, throwing stuff at him whenever he was trying to practice. I'm like, do they not know that the Steelers moved on from him? He didn't move on from the Steelers?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great example. And I think I would agree with Dwayne about the emotional attachment. And in fact, a lot of my research has kind of looked at that to an extent, like the way in which we actually feel like we know the person, like we have this connection with them. And, it's almost like in some of our listeners may not get this analogy, but like if you had a grandma that watched soap operas and like really got invested in like the soap opera characters and like, oh, like why are they cheating on their husband, or and it's like it's fake, it's not real, but it's still very real to them. And so I think that's for a lot of fans, that's what it is with sports. Like it's real. Like, I mean, and we derive not only the emotional attachment, but then the self-esteem. So it's like, oh man, the Patriots were always winning. I'm a Patriots fan, so I wear my jersey. Like, I mean, I'm a winner. I'm successful. And so when someone who's seen as integral to that success leaves, well, now what's going to happen to your identity, right? Because someone who's so critical to the success and the winning is gone, and now you're not as good anymore. And we all know the Patriots haven't done that great since Brady left, right? So I think it's that uncertainty of like, okay, how do I navigate this as a fan moving forward? Because they and I don't know. We'll see if Mac Jones, can do that, but
that's the tall order,
or be that kind of replacement. But and the other thing I would say is like, and I think it also, and that's why your example with Harrison is good too, Preston. I think it depends on how it's done. So like when LeBron had the decision back in 2010, to say, oh, I'm going to South Beach, like
Like,
I think a
that's-
lot of that was just the way it was done, where if he had just been like, oh, I'm going to the Heat, whatever, because it wasn't as catastrophic when he left the Cavs the second time to go to the Lakers. Right? There wasn't the, oh my gosh, look at what he's doing. So I think how it's delivered and how it's done clearly plays a role in some of that too. So
Well, like, how about this case in the reverse? Whenever Joe left for the Chiefs, nobody was killing Joe
Yeah.
Montana over it. I think it was always Steve Young, you're no good. You're no Joe Montana. We want Joe. And, a lot of fans roll with Joe, so it's just kind of interesting how that stuff kind of works, I guess.
I think of the Brett Favre and going to the Vikings too.
Well, that's a division rival,
That's kind of the same thing. People burning jerseys and it's that, I guess it's that emotional attachment, like we've said. You burned us, so we're gonna burn you type deal, I guess.
hey, we've got our other dude in the house. What's up?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I was in a meeting. I've been in meetings all morning.
No, it's all good. So do you need us to kind of recap what we're talking about with Brady in New England?
Yeah. No, I was actually doing research on that earlier today.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys heard about the book that's coming out October 12th.
Uh-huh.
ESPN writer who talked about the insidings and Robert Kraft talking about Bill Belichick and the discombobulation of the relationship between him and Belichick, and then how, when Tom Brady left New England, it was a phone call with Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick didn't even show up to meet him face to face, and this is your quarterback that he won 5 Super Bowls with, and everything like that. So that book's going to be super interesting when I'm thinking about it. Bill Belichick came out in his press conference yesterday, and he said that it sounds like it's a bunch of second and third hand, quotes, which possibly could be. And all Kraft, Belichick, and Brady all declined to comment on the book. But it's super interesting. And then going back to the jersey, I did research on what all New England's planning to do for them. And when Brady left, and you guys may correct me, but I didn't see anybody wearing a Tom Brady.
I didn't see anybody.
When LeBron left, I was actually stationed in Ohio. I was in Chillicothe, Ohio, which is now South Columbus. It was nuts. I mean, bars all over the country, all over the state had that area. And which Jim Gray was the one who hosted it, and he said that it never should have been something that went on. So yeah, I think that it's how, and so Preston talked about, Joe Montana. Do you think it's just a changing of the times and fans think they're entitled to some sort of loyalty from these guys? Or has it become more of a fan base than it was with the 49 than with Joe Montana?
I said maybe it's a changing of the times because that's the 80s, mid 90s. We didn't have social media. These guys aren't active with fans as they used to be. So that could be it. But I guess, like you said, it's the way Joe left. Everybody knew that Steve eventually was going to come in and be the guy. So it's not necessarily Joe moving on from the 49ers saying, I don't like y'all, screw it. It's more the 49ers saying, your time was great, but it's time to move on. So I think that's kind of what it was with Joe and Steve.
I also wonder with football if fantasy has something to do with it. So when Joe Montana, when all that happened, the fantasy wasn't anywhere near what it is now. And so because I think a lot of fans now follow player. I mean, they still follow the teams, but I think fantasy has made people be more fans of individual athletes as opposed to the team. So at least in football, I think maybe that has something to do with it because they can still oh, you're still going to help me win my fantasy league, whether you're on the Buccaneers or the Patriots. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. That's a good point. Because I know a few people that are like, well, I just follow players. I don't follow teams anymore. I just follow players.
Yeah, I know plenty of people like that too.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. My son's 16, and he loves Aaron Rodgers. Absolutely, he loved Aaron Rodgers for forever, and that's what I asked him yesterday, or when Green Bay was playing. He came in there and watched the game with me, and we were talking about it. And I said, man, Aaron Rodgers leads the Packers. Are you a Packers fan or are you an Aaron Rodgers fan? And he said, oh, I'm an Aaron Rodgers fan. So it's just like you said, following the player instead of the team.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, it was the team, and it still is the team. You know, when Emmitt Smith went to the Cardinals,
Oh man, yeah,
he went to the Cardinals, or when Michael Jordan left the Bulls and went to
Yeah.
the Wizards.
yeah,
You know, because that's two. Because I follow Jordan, because it's Michael Jordan. But then Emmitt Smith going to the Cardinals, you know, it's not like I became an Arizona Cardinal fan.
Yeah.
yeah. That's it. And I also think fans are probably more not, maybe, but I think they might be more understanding if a player's doing it to win a championship and they like go and take less money. So it's, it's like, hey, so I mean, I don't know. And that's why it gets back to like, I think all's how it's handled and how it's done, but there's so many great cases to look at here. I totally forgot about Emmitt Smith.
Well, if you're going to say that, then what about all these players joining the Lakers?
Oh yeah. Yeah. But man, I think basketball's changed so much. I just think it's such a different dynamic with the NBA. I mean, like, and I don't know if social media plays a role in that, but I think everyone just like, and go back to LeBron, I think when he went to the Heat, that just ushered in this whole super team era. So I think fans are just conditioned to it now. Like, okay, like for the Trailblazers, and we've got Damian Lillard, like we understand we're probably only going to have Damian Lillard for a few years, and then he's eventually going to go with some super team, right? So I think that's just getting integrated into the whole fabric of the NBA. Like that's just what it is now, because like I remember when Barkley was traded to the Suns from the 76ers, now that was specifically to win a championship. And I think, Philly fans were mad at him and stuff, but now I don't think everyone should be like, oh, he's going to the super team. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe the NBA just has a different culture with it in terms of that.
NBA people, they move around, every season. There's some guys, they're in different cities every season. It's just,
Yeah.
I guess it also depends on the sport. Football, maybe a little loyalty is a little bit more of a value, I guess.
Yeah.
So here's one to that. You want to talk about super teams. So Kawhi left the Spurs and of course won the championship with Toronto. And Dwayne and LeBron James, I think there's only once he didn't have a super team, and that was the Cavaliers when they won the NBA. He had Kyrie and Kevin Love, but it was LeBron James. And so Kawhi's one, does that make that more important than LeBron's four?
Oh man.
Oh, buddy.
That's a good one. That's a good question. So
Yeah.
what is that? What do y'all think? That's a good one.
I think I honestly think LeBron's four are a little bit more important, especially that one that he won with the Cavaliers against the super team of the Golden State Warriors. I think they were down. I think Kevin Love, they were down a lot of key players, and he by himself willed that team to victory. So I think that one series will do it for me. But Kawhi is already in the conversation. Is he gonna stick with the Clippers, or where is he gonna go? So I mean, championships are championships, but I don't know if championships will be the same. Championships are great when you win it with one team and you stick with it, like a Kobe, like a Jordan. But I mean, I don't know if championships will be valued as they used to be, especially in basketball anymore.
Preston, you go like this, bro. Is Kawhi's one better than LeBron's four?
No, it's not.
I would say no too.
Simple math.
Yep.
Well, you can't. Okay. What do you think, Ray?
I don't think so.
No? See, I'm going to be the oddball. I think it's a lot more, especially when they beat the 76ers in the conference finals. And of course, Philadelphia had everybody, and then they went on to who did they beat? Who did they beat in the finals?
Wasn't it
the Warriors, wasn't it? It was the Warriors.
Warriors?
Warriors. So see, look, he beat. Okay, Preston, there you go. He beat a super team.
Yeah. And if I may be forgetting, but I think that was when Durant got hurt. So
Yeah, Durant was out the whole
got
series.
hurt in that.
I think Klay Thompson got hurt mid-series too.
Yeah. So
Klay Thompson got tore his Achilles, still hasn't been the same. So
that's a fun one. That's a fun topic to just think about, that whole thing. And, what's the like, I also wonder, like, do we care more about athletes who stay with one team the whole time versus the ones that, like, because even Montana, like, he wasn't that great in Kansas City. Like, I mean, so I wonder if it tarnishes their legacy at all in the way we remember them, unless they just go and are dominant,
I
right?
guess
But,
kind of
like,
like a Dan Marino type.
yeah,
He stayed with the Dolphins, and you know, we all know how that went. Didn't have success, or you know, I don't know.
Or like,
I guess it depends because you could be a Brett Favre who moves team to team and has varying degrees of success. So
yeah, that's true. So I don't know. That's a fun one. So, all right. Well, Dustin, you want to give us yours?
Well, so we all know this past Sunday, Justin Tucker broke the field goal record of 66 yards, right? Kicked it 66 yards, boomed it, hit the upright, bounced in, which, okay, you can count it. I got it. But the big thing is how long it takes for certain positions to break certain records, right? So the thing is Matt Prater broke the previous record, and it took him, I think they said it took 43 years for the record from Tom Dempsey to get broken for field goal. So then it only took 6 years for Justin Tucker just to kick this one. Put that in perspective, Matt Prater, who broke Tom Dempsey's record, is still kicking for the Arizona Cardinals. So now you have, 2 years ago, Drew Brees
I got
Peyton Manning's passing record. Well, Tom Brady is 143 yards short of passing Brees for the all-time passing league. So is it different? Emmitt Smith broke Walter Payton's all-time rushing record. So that was 25 years. What I'm asking you guys is it more important that these records, like the field goal record, it took so long to break? Is that more impressive because it's a specialty more than Tom Brady passing Drew Brees passing?
Hmm.
So you have
That's
a
a
lot
good-
more reps passing the ball, right? Of course, you have a lot more yards. But kicking a football is a specialty. I mean, you may get 3 kicks in per game. But a 66-yarder is a 66 yarder.
Yeah.
Not more impressive than a passing or rushing or receiving record.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Just because, I mean, I guarantee you, if you gave him 10 shots to hit that, he only hits it that one time.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
and then, with the evolution, especially in football, it's a passing league. The guys are throwing the ball 50, 60 times a game. So, of course, all these passing records are going to keep falling one after another. So,
I think it also has to do with the athletes that are nowadays compared to 40 years ago or whatever it was. The athletes are different. So, I mean, just look at baseball. They have a record for anything. So pretty much every night a record is broken. So, I mean, I think it just has to do with the type of athlete that, or the athletes are changing. They're better. They're bigger, faster, stronger. We all know that. So I think that it just has to do with the athlete. And 66 yards is 66 yards. So I think records are the cliche, records are meant to be broken. So yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. 66 yards is a long ways to kick it.
Man, this is a fun one. Like, so I guess I would come down on the side of like the specialty record. Understand, and I look, like, I mean, Brady and Brees, like they had to have long careers to be able to do that, even though the game shifted. So I mean, I don't necessarily want to take anything away from them, but like, yeah, kickers, I mean, they're bounced around all the time. If they have one bad game, they're done.
Yeah.
Whereas a quarterback, it's like they can have bad seasons and they still get a chance to play. So I also just think that there's something about records that are never going to be broken. Like football, like Preston mentioned this, the game's changed. So a lot of the offensive records, I think, are going to be broken all the time because the game it's more offensive now, right? But like, I'll tell you right now, no one is ever going to break Cal Ripken's consecutive games played
No.
streak.
no.
I mean, I was like, what, 2,500 some odd games in a row?
Yeah.
Like nobody's ever breaking that. I highly doubt someone's going to break Ted Williams 400. Yeah, I'll be shocked if someone hits 400. Will someone break DiMaggio's 56 game hitting streak? No, I don't think so. So, but even like the NBA, like, the points records, the all-time points record, that's going to be broken. But so I just think there's something special about those niche kinds of records because they're going to be more, they're going to endure. And I think it helps connect the past of the game with the current of the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, saying that, Matt Prater, that same day, for the Cardinals, he tried to do the 67 yard. And he came up short, and Baltimore ran it back 109 yards per touchdown.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
110 yards. So Matt Prater was 1 yard short. It was just like the Auburn, Alabama game.
Yeah, that's right.
But so, and that's what I'm on the same boat, that these individual precise records. I mean, Tom Brady's amazing, because he hasn't had any receivers for how long did he go without after Randy Moss, and then just didn't have a receiver.
Yeah,
But-
no, many years, right?
I think it's so much more repetitious. But like I reiterated too, these kickers have, I think the most in a game. I just looked at this. I don't know where it went. I lost it. Anyway, so these guys these guys that do this now, God damn, can you imagine how much they train just their legs? But it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
whole core workout. Like you look at some of these kickers, some of them are plenty, but Justin Tucker, that kid's in shape.
He's jacked.
He's not a kid, he's 40 years old.
He's jacked.
So, and if you're on fantasy, that's one of the first ones you pick up. Which
Yeah, for sure.
Any more fantasy drafts, that's kind of what speaks more about the athlete than anything else. Really good ride.
So it sounds like we're all agreed the individual records are kind of the ones that stand out to us, I think.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
yeah, that'll be a fun one. That'd be a fun one to ask people about, like, what are the records that are never going to be broken? That could be a fun discussion to have. So all right, well, so that brings us to me, and I'm sorry to do this because I know we're trying to not have a lot of these stories, but I just think we can't ignore this one. So yesterday, the National Labor Relations Board released a memorandum stating that it's ironically ambiguous, but that some student athletes are considered employees, and so when cases come up before the National Labor Relations Board under the National Labor Relations Act, student athletes should then be considered, in certain cases, certain student athletes would then be considered employees. So, and there's been a lot of like back and forth. I've seen all sorts of stuff the past, 24 hours or so about what the implications of this are. And we can certainly get into that. But I guess I'm just curious from y'all's perspective, like what is going to happen to the college game or college sports if we now say student athletes are employees? Just what are some things that maybe come to mind in terms of like things that are going to have to be navigated or challenges, opportunities, and whatnot?
I think it's going to be run more like a business than it already is. I think if the starting quarterback at Texas Tech's now an employee, and I just think it's going to be more like a business, run more like kind of similar to the NFL, but more on a minor league level. I think that's kind of the direction it's going to go if this sticks around. I'd looked into it. I didn't read much about it yesterday, but I think just from what I read, I think it's going to be similar to any other business, any professional business, I think.
The question I have with that, Dwayne, is on that. If it's ran as a business, employees can cap out employees' wages, right?
Right.
But now you have this NIL rule where these kids can make it, however much money they want. So how does the labor board affect the NIL fund?
I don't know. Like I said, I looked into it. I didn't read much into it, but I mean, I don't know. That's a good question.
So I guess one thing I would say, and then Preston, we can go to you, but just real quick, Dustin, to your question, I see it like, and in our classes, like the students always hate when we cover the employment law section because it's just tons and tons and tons of things. But like, so if it becomes an employment relationship, then most companies have like a consulting policy. So if you're an employee of this company, you can do these other things, but they have to not interfere with your work duties. And so where I would see, I guess, NIL fitting in is that there'll be some sort of policy about, hey, this is your work. So you can do these things, but they have to be done, like at Texas Tech, like I can go do consulting, but I can't let it affect my job at Texas Tech. Right. So,
like done
so I guess that's where I would see that, Dustin.
Yeah.
But who's going to enforce that?
Yeah. Doc, me and you talked about it briefly right before the podcast. So, I see it, like you said, run more like a business, which means, is it 40-hour work weeks or 20-hour work weeks that actually have to be followed? If you are paying each athlete now, like a guaranteed salary, what does that look like? Is there a salary cap, or is it just based on how much revenue the sport or the university brings in? It could change a whole lot, but right now the article says it's only for private schools, and the vast majority of schools aren't private, but that'll be interesting to see if it grows into the public sector. So
yeah.
I also wonder about like would class then be considered work time?
And see, that's what I was going to ask. I wonder how the education part of it, because they are student athletes, how that's going to factor into, well, I'm not going to class today, or you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and drop. I mean, what are they going to do? Fire you? What are they going to? They're going to fire the starting quarterback? Then it goes into things like that. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, and this is the last thing I'll say, but like it gets interesting when you start looking at like, how are we going to classify them? So if they are in fact employees, so we have to classify them as hourly or salaried or hourly, right? So my understanding of the wage laws is it's going to be hard to classify them as salaried employees. So if we say they're hourly employees, then what counts as work time? So like if a baseball player wants to go up to the cage and get some work in for a couple hours, is that quote work time? And then if classes are work time, then is homework work time? You know what I'm saying? And then like if the wage laws, if we say we're in a state where overtime is 40 hours a week, anything over 40 hours a week, then we start looking at overtime, So I don't know. I think it's going to get I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things there, I think, for me. But
you're going to need Jim Helper with a stopwatch. See how much time.
Right. Well, and then something else I read was that like basically, and Preston, you and I were talking about this before, but it's like, most companies, if like a unit or a division is not performing, they just shut it down, right? It'd be like, we're getting rid of it. So like, could we see athletic departments basically say, oh, well, this team is not making money, so we're getting rid of it because it's not financially viable, right?
Well, so I used to run my own business and I had to hear those employment laws pretty good. The biggest thing that I see happening though is a soccer player not getting paid as much as a starting quarterback, or as Dwayne just said, you have your starting quarterback and the offensive lineman makes less money, then you get into all sorts of diversity and maybe not diversity, but equal pay.
Yeah.
That opens a whole different can of worms, especially for employment. So I know you have Title IX right now, but this goes, this will be a lot more, and this is going to take a long time.
And see, one of the things I did remember, now that you say Title IX will universities and colleges have to follow Title IX now? Does that go out the window? So, that's another thing that's going to be interesting. And going back to your point about pay, well, if I'm just some slap walk-on offensive lineman kicker guy, and I'm not making enough as a starting quarterback, where's that? Where's that medium? Where's that happy medium to where both are happy? So yeah, it's gonna get worse before it gets better, I think.
Well, and it seems like I read something where I'm sorry, I apologize, but like they basically said that this would not apply to walk-ons. It would only apply.
Oh, okay.
So walk-ons would be excluded potentially. That doesn't change the issue,
Right.
right? It probably even complicates it more, but, and then it's like, to your point there about equity. Well, okay, if we say you all are hourly employees, well, do we pay everybody the same? Or do we say the hourly wage for an offensive tackle on the football team is X? The wage for a volleyball player is Y, the wage for a women's golfer is Z. Like, I don't, how do you even determine that, right?
If it does go to it, I think it has to be the same across the board. Because if you go in
everybody?
and say, this linebacker isn't worth as much as this tight end, you're gonna start seeing a lot more kids go towards the higher paying position.
Yeah.
And you're gonna see a big shortage in the other positions. Because a kicker isn't gonna make as much as a lineman or a star quarterback.
Unless he's kicking 66-yard
That's all
field
right.
goals.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know, that's a big one.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's going to be fascinating to watch, and I don't know. I don't know. It's going to be a lot coming out, I think, over the next little bit on this topic. So something definitely to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys ready for the feel good story?
Yes.
Okay, so the Paralympics were a couple weeks back, they closed ceremony. There were 4 visually impaired athletes. I don't even know how to say the name. I'm not going to try it. There's one from Algeria, one from Ethiopia, and one from Kenya. They ran the 1,500 meters, right? And so when you're visually impaired, you have a guide that runs your long shot. They all ran it faster than the Olympic gold medal.
No way.
They ran 3 minutes and 48 seconds, and the Olympic time was 3 minutes and 50 seconds.
I'm
Dang.
more impressed by their guide that's running with them.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. That's a great story. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Especially, me being a disabled individual, former guy, I used to run on the Paralympic circuit too. So seeing that, just proving that, even though we may have some limitations in other areas, we can be great in others. That's always awesome to hear and see. So
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, I read over that and I thought it was pretty cool, especially faster than the Olympic champion.
Yeah, that's amazing. But we often don't give individuals in that area, we don't give them a lot of credit, and they're very capable, right? And Preston, you kind of talked about that. So
Yeah.
very cool. All right. Well, gentlemen, great episode today. Thanks to everybody for listening. This is Doc and Dudes, Sports with Doc and Dudes podcast, and we will be back at you next week.